how uncomfortable was the Klingon makeup on DS9?
Has anybody ever, are there anybody playing football? Did anybody play football here? Even as the Pee Wee League or anything like that? I played football through college at Bucknell, and I was very accustomed to putting on your dress. You have, well, the first thing is the socks. No, the first thing is the jock, but we don't have to go there. The second thing are the socks. You put the socks on, and you tape them just over your calves so they just look really good, you know, if you want high socks. Like flankers usually had high socks. I was a defensive end, and my socks were usually sort of falling down, ripped and torn and grass stained and dirty and old, like me. But then you have pads in your pants. Put your pants on. You got hip pads, you got thigh pads, you got knee pads. So everybody's legs look pretty big in those things. If you didn't have the pads in, even though you're lifting weights all the time, your legs are not going to look great with this huge upper body. But the shoulder pads, you put the shoulder pads on, and they lace up. They used to lace up. Now they just sort of Velcro together, or I'm not sure even how they attach, because it's been 20 years. I played from 68 to 72, 40 years since I played. But we were used to putting on this apparel, and putting on a Klingon costume was pretty much the same thing, except there are no pads in the pants. Very tight lame, sort of spandex pants that were very fashionable, but they were not padded. You couldn't have taken a real good hit on the thigh bone without getting a bad bruise. But these shoulder pads were pretty much the same design, and they looked like shoulder pads. So, and the costume was made out of leather with some neoprene in it, and it was heavy as lead. It's steel. They had pieces of metal on it. So I was very accustomed to that. And the makeup took 4 hours, the makeup and hair. I would get there at, if I was working on a given day, I'd get there at 4 a.m. in the morning. It was the only people on the Paramount lot, the studio, was the guard at the gate, myself, and my makeup man, which he was not very happy about, getting there at 4 to make up the Klingons. But, and his name was Dave Kwasnick. And the funny thing is, everybody called him Q, because his last name started with a Q. And I am quite sure that that's where John Delancey's character came from, Dave Kwasnick, the makeup man at Paramount. So it took 4 hours. I get there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it took 4 hours to get in makeup. I had several, they call them prosthetics, latex prosthetics for the face, which were basically not attachments. They seemed like they were attachments. What's the word? I can't remember the word they used. But it took that long to get it to look, and Star Trek should have gotten so many Emmys for makeup, because the shows that would get them, in my opinion, were all right. But Michael Westmore, who's the reigning member of the Westmore family, the Westmore family has been doing makeup in Hollywood for 90 years. I mean, they were right at the beginning. And there's every classic movie from the golden age of Hollywood has a Westmore. It's either Wally Westmore or David Westmore in the credits. And Michael did an incredible job. He made aliens look so real that people accepted them. People accept Klingons as actual things. There's nothing, you see a Klingon on the screen and you say, oh, it's a Klingon. It's like, look at that makeup. You don't say that, you say, oh, it's a Klingon. Yeah, we know that. We They live on Kronos. And for that reason, he made it look so good that it didn't look. It didn't make people think of makeup, I think. Anyway, I got there at 4 o'clock. The guard was there. The makeup man was there. It took 4 hours. So at 7:30, I got. Also, I had 3 wigs. You have a front wig, another wig, and another wig on top of that to poof it out. And get the costume on. And once you get the costume on, you can't do any normal human function because it's just impossible to take everything off and then get it back on. So the longest day I ever had, excuse me, it was 22 hours in makeup and costume. But we didn't mind because if you're called the next day, which we often were, you have a thing, because of our union, they have a 12-hour turnaround, which means once you're dismissed, you can't start again until 12 hours later, just to keep people from being overtired driving into work and whatnot and having accidents. They basically didn't want to get sued by people for, so that's what that was about. But you could violate that 12-hour turnaround if you paid immense amounts of money to the person whose time was being violated. So we didn't, it was like, oh, violate me, please, some more. Because, you know, money talks. And so there was that. 3 or 4 days in a row, though, you know, just knock you out. And one time I actually fell asleep. You cannot ever, if anybody goes into acting and goes on stage, works in a studio, either a professional theater or a studio in Hollywood, you cannot fall asleep on stage during the scene. And you really can't snore. Which I did, all 3 of those things. Andy Robinson's character, Garrick, was having a very moving scene with his father. His father was lying there dying, and Garrick was saying, he was saying, I forgive you, son, for all these. No, Father, please, it is not you that should. And in the background, I'm laying back there on a cot, and he hears this. Father, you must not. So the next thing I see, I'm sound asleep on the cot. The next thing I see is Andy Robinson's face saying, JG, let me get through it once. That was a long day. And you just don't. I've never heard of anybody else falling asleep on a set. It was a very hot set. It was a very long day. And we were lying in cots. What do you expect in the dark? Anyway. Why was I talking about that? What question did you ask?
You answered just how uncomfortable the makeup and the costume was.
To me, it didn't bother me. Bob O'Reilly hated his skin did not deal well with neoprene, and because you're really soaking wet on the inside, because that's why the neoprene's just like a wetsuit. Because the lights are so hot. Might not look that way on the screen, but they're really hot when you stand out there. And it didn't agree with him. The only thing I did well in sports was I could take a lot of abuse without being upset about it. Basketball, I could get fouled and hit, and it wouldn't really faze me. Football, you get blocked by large people. And I had the same sort of mentality in terms of the Klingon uniform. It was incredibly hot and incredibly uncomfortable, but it didn't really bother me. And I didn't have any skin that was, my skin is I guess it's sort of like cowhide. It's not. It doesn't get too troubled by much of anything. We did the first CD-ROM called Klingon. There was a guy who was playing the bartender in the scene. We were in a studio that had no air conditioning in the middle of July in Los Angeles, and it was really hot. And the guy he had a heart attack. And they took him away, but they replaced him. Said, oh, sorry, really sorry about that. Come in, welcome to our cast.